But it really happened once I sold my business. I didn't want to keep one foot in one business and one foot in another. And I know it works for some people as far as, if you're going to have like passive income, that works well. But I really wanted to be all in.
There is a new American dream. One that doesn't involve working till you're 65 before you start enjoying life. If you're someone looking for ways to regain control over your time and check off that bucket list now, you're in the right place. We share tips from experts on investing, personal finance, and mindset so that you can finally have the freedom to work less and live more. This is the Freedom Investing Podcast with your host, Chris Toribio.
What's going on, everyone? This is Chris Toribio with the Freedom Investing Podcast, and I'm so happy you're here to join us for another amazing episode. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the show. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with our latest episodes. Moving on to today's guest, we have Gary Lipsky. Gary has been a real estate investor since 2002 and has invested in 3,000 units and over $250 million in real estate transactions. Gary has spoken at many real estate conferences across the United States and is the host of the Real Estate Investor Podcast and co-author of the best-selling book, Best in Class. His expertise in asset management is his secret sauce, and he started developing those skills at a young age. Gary got into real estate full-time, and specifically multifamily, at the beginning of 2017. He co-produced 3 independent films in his 20s. He founded ARC, an after-school outdoor education and leadership development company. He grew to over $12 million in revenue and over 700 employees, while positively affecting over 9,000 students daily throughout Southern California. Gary is also a founding board member of Core Educational Services, a Los Angeles-based nonprofit benefiting underserved youth. These endeavors taught him how to build systems, winning teams, and handle adversity, skills that have translated well into real estate. Gary, welcome to the show, brother. Before we dive into it, give us a quick 2-minute rundown of who you are, your background, and where you are in your journey to achieving time freedom.
Yeah, I'm based here in Los Angeles, California, and have done very well in my endeavors and in real estate. So I'm there, I guess, in my financial freedom. Although I always like to be challenged and continue to work hard and grow my company and create more financial freedom for my investors and for my family as well.
I love it. And it sounds like you really were starting out as a business owner first before you jumped into the real estate space. Is that true partly? Or I guess, what did that kind of look like? Because you also started developing some asset management skills at a young age.
Yeah. So, I mean, even as a youth, I had we washed cars and auto detailed them and shovel driveways during the winter. And in college, I started a restaurant delivery service, kind of like a DoorDash or a Postmates. And then after college, I co-produced 3 low budget independent films. So I was developing those skills then for real estate later. And so even like my first house that I bought in 2002, we had no money down, we had debt, we converted the garage to an office for that after school business because I needed that rent money. Like I to pay for the house. So that was me, basically house hacking. And we bought a house that we could open up and do some renovations to. I didn't know at that time that I was like, I was going to get really passionate about it and have it become my career. But that was a really great beginning point for me of kind of evaluating markets and houses and finding the best value, the best bang for my buck. And that was the beginning of it,
That's really impressive. So it sounds like the first tenant you ever had was your own business. So you converted the garage to an office space. Your tenant was your business at the time, and then you used that to rent out and help kind of subsidize your housing expense. So that also helps you on the personal finance standpoint as well. That's incredible. That's a great way to get started. And since then, you have since grown to over 3,000 units. I mean, there's a lot to break down there. But what I want to start with is really first identifying the role of what an asset manager is, right? What is an asset manager? Clearly, you have a very diverse background, but what kind of background should they typically have, or skill set should they typically have to bring to the table? And what differentiates one that's good versus one that's not so good?
Yeah, I had a very strong financial background. I graduated with Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, and then just running businesses. That was a normal fit for me. But if you haven't run a business before, if you're a good project manager, that covers a lot of the basic skills for asset management. It isn't. You don't need to go to college for it. You don't need to be a rocket science. It's coming up with that business plan for that asset and seeing it through all the way through execution, and so making sure the whole team is on the same page, and that includes usually you would hire a third party property management company, and you're relying on their expertise in the market. What are the rents that they think they can achieve based on the business plan, and so working together on that before you actually put in an LOI on that property, because you got to make sure what you're underwriting matches to that. So asset management is managing the manager, which is the property management company, making sure you're on track, doing your checking your projections to the actual budget, making sure you're doing the units, the whatever the plan includes, rebranding it, the exterior, making sure the team is motivated and going the extra mile, because that's huge. And knowing the best time to sell as well, making sure you have good debt on the property, making sure you have the right cash reserves, making sure you're projecting out, over time, and make sure you're hitting your numbers. And if you're not, dealing with the issues that arise, because nothing goes perfect. So how do you deal with the struggles? I mean, we've had one of our best deal that we sold was, we were dealing with problems from before we closed till even when, all the way through to closing. But it was a grand slam. It's just dealing with those things and constantly solving it, whether it's a plan B, plan C, plan D. That's asset management.
So it sounds like it's really a culmination of proper planning and carrying that execution throughout the entire hold of the asset, right? And so obviously a lot of that seems like you developed with your prior experiences in all the businesses that you've owned up until that time, right? So what I want to do is, now that we have an understanding of what an asset manager is, I want to take a step back and get there from the very beginning, right? So you said that you had some pizza delivery businesses or food delivery businesses growing up, right? And then you eventually founded ARC, and you were able to grow that to over $12 million in revenue and over 700 employees, right? So that's not a small undertaking by any means, right? So I want to kind of break that down here in terms of how you got started with that, and what did you do to kind of grow that business to the scale that it was when you sold it?
Yeah. So at the time, I had just been, I was working on some writing scripts I had working with something with MTV and with Michael Keaton's company, and I needed some cash flow coming in. So a friend was working with a school doing some music education, and I had done some sports programs when I was in high school for a while, and so I asked them to introduce me to a school, and they said they need a lifeguard. I said, I've got a lifeguard, and I went out on Craigslist, hired a lifeguard, and that was my first employee at the time. And then I spoke to a couple other schools, and they wanted sports programs for their kids, and it just started building from there. And I hired someone for a gig. It was going to be running a PE program, and that program fell apart. It never, I think they ended up internally hiring someone, but this person had a teaching background working with at-risk youth. His parents were teachers. So I doubled down on like his curriculum skills and my business skills. And we just made enough to keep going each year. Like it wasn't like, magical from the very beginning, but just enough to keep going every year. And we just kept building. Schools really liked us and trusted us, and it's just growing from there. And and it just, over time, it just snowballed. And, we just hired, teams to really get there. Because at the end of the day, I had 4 direct reports. People ask me, how did you manage all this staff? I had 4 direct reports. I had to make sure they were doing their job. And then below them, they had their, depending upon each role, 15 people, 10 people, whatever it was, they managed their team. So it was some trial and error. It wasn't like I had like a course that, something I learned in school to get me there. It was trial and error and being a part of different, mentor groups to help me take it from a family run business to really a business,
That's fantastic. And so I guess during this path of growth, and how long did you own this business for? I guess what was the hold period?
About 15
About 15
years.
years.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you first had that business, did you build it from the ground up? Like, were you involved in the day-to-day from the get-go, or from the get-go you said, look, I know where my lane is and I need to make sure I already implement systems and people to take over the stuff that I'm not necessarily good at?
I was running sports classes myself. I had like 4 different yellow pages, and calling every single school in those yellow pages. I was running team building programs. If someone was out sick, sometimes I ran an after school program. We bought portable rock walls. I was driving the rock wall up to like Sacramento for a conference and bringing it into a convention hall, or trying to park it across massive traffic in LA, like in our storage area. So I was leading a lot of the programs in the beginning, driving these, learning how to drive these vehicles and whatnot. So I think, like in every business, there's that inflection point when I should have passed it off to someone earlier. Although I really liked the connection of working with the students. And just like in multifamily too, it's like you bootstrap, but as soon as you start hiring that first employee, things really start to take off, and because it frees up so much time to focus on other more important things.
Right, absolutely. And so given that point where you hit that inflection and said, look, it is time for me to hire someone on, because now I'm getting to the point where like it's hindering the growth of my company because I'm still remaining in it, right? And so did you find, though, that because you bootstrapped it from the get-go, when it came to hiring that first employee, you were better equipped to have a clear-cut picture of like what you needed them to do, as opposed to like if you hired someone from the get-go and not really truly understanding the business from the first place?
Absolutely, because I knew all the tasks that they had to do, and I knew exactly what that role is, so it definitely helped me. Certainly, there's some figuring out as well all the time. When you get going, nothing is perfect, but I mean, I'm always someone that wants to get better as a business person, husband, father, brother, whatever it is. Like I want to consistently get better, and that's one of our values at our company is Kaizen, like constantly small improvements. And if you consistently do that over time, it's going to pay huge dividends. So I don't, sometimes, it's nothing's laid out perfectly, and, you got to figure it out as you go along and tweak it, and it evolves, everything is evolving over time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing that really stuck out to me was, given the size of the company, and as you said, on the day-to-day basis, you had 4 reports that you truly took a look at and responded to, right? So like at that point, was that just a matter of establishing the KPIs that you need to track on a day-to-day basis? Or like, what did those reports kind of provide you to really have an idea of like where you needed to grow with the business, and also where you need to take a step back and like try and focus on fixing things here and there?
Yeah, it might have been like 2011. I joined Vistage, which is like a business group. So, there's 15 people in a room, and everyone, shares their KPIs and what they're struggling with. And 99% of the time, it's always people. Like whether you're trying to hire people, you need to get rid of someone, you need to motivate someone, whatever it is. It all comes down to people problems. But yeah, it's developing KPIs and how to think systematically. Traction is a great book that talks about it out there. Um, and if you can leverage and work to really strongly as a team, it could really provide rocket fuel for your business.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've implemented EOS into our own company as well. And I can tell you just the way in which it holds everybody accountable, the clarity that it provides everyone in the company in terms of the direction in which we want to go, it really makes a huge, huge difference in the productivity and the scalability of the business because everyone's on the same page. And so you were moving forward from there. You also mentioned something that really stuck out in my mind is continuing to motivate people, right? So you have people that are on your team. In your case, you had over 700 employees. And so motivation is one of those things that they don't necessarily talk about. We always talk about KPIs. We always talk about the metrics that you should be following to make sure that your business continues to grow. But at the end of the day, you're dealing with people. And people have this emotional type of motivation as well. And so you found a way to tap into that. What does that kind of look like in terms of keeping people motivated to move forward?
Yeah, so in the after school world, that was easy because we were making a huge difference in people's lives. Certainly, the money wasn't there; it wasn't a lot of it was grant funded, and they just people weren't getting paid what they were worth, which was unfortunate. But in the real estate world, it's um, having everyone has a say, and their opinion matters. So from my property manager to my regional to my asset manager, everyone has a say, and it's valued. It's not top down like this is the way we're going to do it. Everyone has their own unique insight, and that's really important. And when you can get that from your team, they're going to go a lot further. Like your on-site team is going to go the extra mile, picking up trash or communicating and being friendly to staff. Sometimes they'll work late because they love their job and they know that you know they've made it their own. They associate with their identity, and so that's really, really important. And it's not always easy to find a connection with every single person, but if you can do that, it really pays dividend. And you got to make sure that they know that they'll be rewarded and they're valued.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of different ways to motivate people, right? And I'm sure, as you can imagine, dealing with the amount of people that you've dealt with and led the amount of people that you've led, it does take some skills in terms of figuring out what people's underlying motivation is, right? So in your case, where do you often find out what people's underlying motivation is? Is it in the interview when you first meet them? Is it something that do you implement some sort of personality tests in terms of your screening process? I guess, how do you kind of initially figure out what their underlying motivation typically is?
Yeah, we do a personality test. I think that helps guide you a little bit, but it's really those one-on-one times, when you're sharing you're having a coffee or grabbing a meal where you're not talking business and you can really get to know that person and what's going on in their personal life. Because I mean, we've had people that have worked for us, and you could tell by their production that their home life is a mess. There's something that's affecting them, and you're not motivating them. Nothing is connecting, and it's always the background, what's going on there, that is a mess. And if you could straighten that piece out, or at least help them gain more structure, then they're going to be so much more productive. So having those non-work talks, and it's just totally casual, and you're not, motivated to fix something, but just to listen and to understand, that are the most productive conversations.
I absolutely love it. I mean, I could already tell just from the experience that you've built and the way in which you navigate working with a lot of people that like this is I think for our listeners here, this is really the meat and potatoes of like what makes someone successful, and regardless of what endeavor it is, right? Whether it's asset management or you have a business or you just have a partnership that you're working with people. I mean, it's having these little things that are non-tangible. Like you can't quantify these type of things. These are the qualitative qualities that you have to have as a leader in order to succeed. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate you sharing that with us today. So I want to take a step back here. So you started by purchasing your first property in 2002, and here you are today sitting at over 3,000 units. This obviously didn't happen overnight, but what's interesting is that you started specifically multifamily investing in 2017. So can you kind of describe your trajectory from 2002 to 2017 in terms of how you scaled from that single family home to the unit count that you have today?
Yeah. So, I didn't know at the time, but I had done some renovations on my own houses, and I turned one of them into a rental. And I was really studying neighborhoods where the biggest upside was. And um, so I was building up a lot of net worth because of those little leapfrogs of to different neighborhoods and whatnot. And then I started investing in other people's deals through my retirement fund. But it really happened once I sold my business. I didn't want to keep one foot in one business and one foot in another. And I know it works for some people as far as, if you're going to have like passive income, that works well. But I really wanted to be all in to real estate. And, I'd been running the other company for almost 15 years and build up a really good team. I wasn't challenged. I was ready for my next endeavor. And so I committed to real estate and finding that niche of where to spend my time in, because there's a squirrel factor in real estate. There's so many different ways you hear like, oh,
Right.
like short-term, rentals is a great way, or flipping, or this or that. And so multifamily was a good, fit for me because it's running a business. So I poured all my energies into that. And, I probably went off topic here, but just really, really focusing on multifamily and getting out of that mindset. When you're an entrepreneur, you really want to just it's you, and you have people that work for you, really,
Right.
not wanting to partner with others. Once I shifted that mindset to partner with others, it really helped me, take off for multifamily, because I wasn't trying to do a 12 unit anymore to build up a resume, and doing 12 units, maybe to 24 over, many years. We finally got a 42 unit. And then from there we did a 120 unit. And then it was a 13-month lag because of COVID hit and we couldn't get a deal done, but then kept, growing from there. But teaming with other people really allowed me to scale fast.
So it sounded like you did what was a lot of people refer to as the stack, where you start out with a single family home and then you got something bigger than that. And then next time you got something slightly bigger and then something slightly bigger. So over time, you just felt more and more comfortable acquiring these properties with bigger unit counts as you got your systems in place, as you got your relationships in place and your experience in place. So for someone who's looking to get started, I guess, what would you suggest to them? Let's say they have the same position that you were in 2002. They have a single family home. Maybe they have a duplex or a small portfolio of maybe 4 to 6 units. What would you suggest to them to help take it to that next level?
Yeah, definitely get involved in some kind of mentorship group. I know there's a lot of them out there, and a lot of them by people that haven't done much, or if at all. So just be careful who team up with. And when I did it, the biggest thing that I got out of it wasn't really the education part, but the networking part, because you want to build a team of people where you know, like, and trust them. Maybe someone's a KP, so they could sign on the loan if you don't have enough net worth, or someone that has liquidity, or someone that has asset management experience, or someone that's got boots on the ground. But if you could build a group of people, it allows you to build that confidence too, because in the beginning, you just don't have that experience and you just don't know. And so you think it's a good deal, but teaming, having a couple other eyes on it and getting their viewpoint on it really helps. And solving problems together. You're not on your own. And I think that's something that's very unique to real estate. Like, I have a large network, and everyone's always willing to help and provide. If I don't know something, I can go to a friend, and if they don't know it, they know someone that has. So it's really helped me. I don't profess to know everything. Even now, there's plenty of stuff I don't know, but I'll go to a friend and find out, like, hey, have you, do you know the answer to this? Because I'm struggling with this, and it's helped me. And so building out your network and being around like-minded people really, really helps.
Absolutely. Yeah. They always say your network is your net worth, right? And so being able to tap on somebody who may have been through a certain experience that you haven't yet, or has been through the experience that you're currently going through can make the difference on whether or not your deal goes completely south or you're able to kind of continue carrying on with the business plan as intended. So you're absolutely right. Your network is a huge, huge thing. And I encourage everybody to kind of surround yourselves with like-minded individuals so that we could potentially find partners to do so. And the one thing that was really interesting to me is you're saying, you were this owner of this business. You were doing almost everything yourself. I mean, you had people working for you, but ultimately the risk and responsibility was entirely on you. And now you jump into a position where you are partnering with people who maybe you didn't necessarily know very well. Or so what was your kind of vetting process when it came to figuring out who you're going to partner with on that initial deal?
Yeah, I think we did some background checks and just spending time with that person to see if they have the same values, the same work ethic. Are they looking at deals the same way? And are they? Everyone says they're conservative, but are they conservatively just like you? And able to bring something else different. It's not great to partner with someone with this very same skill set as you. It's better to have some differing skill sets. So. It's not a lifelong partnership like a business. It's for that deal, but making sure, they have a very clean background. You don't want to, get in business with someone that might show up when you're trying to do a loan and they have an issue from the past, or the way they talk to investors too. You want someone that pitches it the same way that's factual, because I've seen people pitch deals out there that definitely are stretching the truth. And I don't want to align myself with someone like that. I'm in it for the long haul, and I want to make sure I'm picking partners that have the same outlook, that are willing to bail investors out if there's an issue, willing to do whatever it takes. And not a lot of people out there are willing to do that,
Absolutely. And on that note about having these synergistic skill sets, I mean, did you know from the get-go that asset management was the skill set for you, that you were going to bring that to the table?
Yeah. I because of that business background, that was my strength in working with people. So I knew that, strengths perspective, I'm going to lean on that strength. Now, I certainly didn't know, I knew how to run businesses and everything, but asset management for real estate was, I needed to learn those concepts and apply those skill sets. So what I did, we started a podcast after my second deal to really hyper fuel that, and so we, over time I've interviewed about 150 people on that very subject. So I bring on people that, for subjects I didn't know or wanted more insight on. So I was leveraging other people's skill sets as well to kind of make sure I knew asset management, was really dialed in as well. And so it's a process. We're always improving. Nothing is ever static. We're always looking to improve how we asset manage, and sometimes it changes because of the property management company that you work with, that they do things a little differently than someone else you're working with. So like everything, and like what I said earlier, it's got to constantly evolve and grow over time.
I love it. Yeah. And also knowing when to pivot, knowing when to bail. There's a lot of different things and a lot of decisions that you kind of have to make with the team in order to make sure that you're doing the best that you can for the investors that you have available on that deal. So for those who aren't really familiar with the different type of teams that are kind of available and different components of the team of a multifamily deal, I mean, you yourself, you're an asset manager, but I mean, what are some other members of the team that people may be willing to consider if they're interested in jumping into a large multifamily deal?
Yeah. So I'll just talk about my team right now. I have an operations person. I have someone that's an acquisitions/asset manager. So I'll lean over his shoulder, but he'll do all the legwork. I also have a director of investor relations. So that could be, a formulation of your team. You might have someone that might have construction experience that, maybe they'll manage more of the CapEx projects. And you might need a couple different capital raisers depending upon what size deal you're going for. But you gotta have that asset manager, which is so key. Because that can make a good deal great or a bad deal good, and staying ahead of the constant fluctuations in the market and with your debt, your capital reserves is really really critical. We just saw this last weekend a huge portfolio go
Yeah.
under in a very short amount of time. Yeah, and they didn't have an asset manager basically.
That's a really good point there. I mean, the business plan, literally what the plan is and the projections that you plan on returning to both your team as well as the investors are entirely dependent on the execution of the business plan. And that business plan is not only formed but executed by the asset manager. So, in terms of the day to day, right? So you sold your business, you jumped into real estate full time, you got into these larger deals. What does your day to day kind of look like now? Are you walking properties on a regular basis? Are you meeting with contractors? Like what does your role kind of look like?
Yeah. So right now it's a little slower as far as walking properties, but I'll always walk my properties at least once a month. They're all in Tucson and Phoenix, so it's not like we've got cities all over the country. We keep it in a small radius so we can be experts in those markets, and when we see a deal, we could jump on it if we really like it. So it allows me to really know my territory, so I could visit all my properties, maybe tour 3-4 new properties, walk some comps, a lot of networking, and so that's having a lunch with a broker or talking to a lender or other investors or other operators too that do what I do. And hey, what are you seeing? What are the struggles you're facing with? And I get a lot of information, and I can get some help, and I can give help to others. So I'm part of a bunch of different groups, reading a lot on where the market is headed, where it's been. Looking at we'll look at probably 150 deals over the course of the year. So even deals we aren't going after, I want to understand why it was priced the way it was, the vintage, median household income, the rent. So I understand the market. So when we see something, boom, we can go. So there's just a lot of time spent on that as well, and then all the little things that you got to take care of.
Gotcha. So it sounds like a lot of times you're working very heavily with someone who is kind of responsible for acquisitions then, right? Because if someone's going to be bringing in a deal to the table and they did their initial underwriting on, well, you as the person who would be responsible for carrying out the business plan, you'd probably have to also carry out your own underwriting and assumptions and kind of talk about it with them in terms of like where the deal makes sense, right?
Yeah. So my acquisitions person sometimes a broker will call me, sometimes we'll call him, and he'll pull all the files, do the underwriting, and then present it to me and say, here, these are the things I like about it, or these are the things I don't like about it. And we'll track all the different deals. So he's doing all the heavy lifting, and then he's going to get my overview as well on who we may partner with. Does it make sense to go after it? Where, what price are we willing to give for an LOI, or what other research we need to do before taking the next step.
Very, very good point there. So, on the day to day, you're taking a look at a ton of different properties, ton of different opportunities. Have you ever encountered a situation where you created this initial business plan, something happened, something changed in the economy, something changed in the vendors that you're working with, whatever it may be, the tenant class, the tenant base that you have available, where you had to change your business plan and in order to make sure that the returns or the deal continue to execute appropriately?
Yeah, that happens a lot, quite honestly. We'll have one business plan and then we'll change course. So, one of the properties, it was, we bought it just before COVID, so we couldn't get some of the tenants that we wanted out. When COVID hit, I think everyone froze on their CapEx, and then, just to save money and see how things shook out. And then probably 2 months later, we're like, okay, full steam ahead. Let's start, back on our renovation plan. And then we thought we had some extra money. Always good to have cash reserves so you can make those pivots. We decided to paint the property, which we didn't initially. We thought it was good enough, so we spent something like, I don't know, $125,000 to paint the property, and we ended up selling that within 2 years because we quickly went back to executing on our business plan and getting some of the rough tenants out. We added cameras we weren't expecting because of COVID. So, but when we did all these things, our NOI skyrocketed, and we had, along those ways, we also had to fire our property manager and our regional too. That, to be honest, we waited too long to do that. But once we got the right people in, boom, the NOI took off, and we were able to lock in. We got our projected 5-year returns within 2 years, and we capitalized on it for our investors.
Can you kind of dive into like what made the difference between that one property manager and vendor as opposed to the next? Like how were you able to bring someone else on board and suddenly all of these things started coming into play? Like what difference did that make in your experience working with them?
Yeah, so we thought we gave the property manager like more time, and too much time, because she was too, I guess, involved in that community on the property, and wasn't holding our residents accountable for getting their rents in, or saying things were done, and then we'd always spot check. We go to our properties many times unannounced, and so she said something was done and it wasn't done, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And then the regional property manager wasn't holding her accountable, and was always fighting for the property manager, and not for us on our execution of our business plan. So we sat down with the owner of the company and said, hey, we want to make a change. These are the things that we're looking for in someone. And he took it to heart. He knew what we weren't getting and what we wanted to get. And so once he put in a person that really was a lot more technically savvy and accountable, we brought in the property manager that, again, this is someone that we really connected to make a difference. I'll tell you a story directly for that. She was a big Chiefs fan, and my partner at the time was a Raiders fan, and those two teams hate each other. And so I think we were about like 90% occupied, and I was joking, hey, you get to 100%, not that 100% is our goal, he'll wear a Kansas City Chiefs shirt. And our occupancy got up to 100 like within a few weeks. Like it was remarkable, because it was like a joke and fun that we had every week at our property call meeting. And we come to the property, she's got a Chiefs shirt ready for him, and we take a picture, and she's just smiling ear to ear. And that just allowed us many months of like fun while we were working on the business. And no amount of bonus could ever have motivated her like that. And it's just something that was just very personal to her. Like it became, something that really like got her like excited to like get to that number. So that's just another, finding people, how to motivate them, finding the right people for your asset could make a huge, huge difference.
That is genius. I love that. And there was not even any monetary component to it, right? I mean, you saw that there was this motivation from getting to know her. I'm sure you had a lot of difficult conversations with your initial property manager, getting yourself to the point where you're able to find a new one. But ultimately, it was getting to know her and what motivated her. And before you know it, your business plan was completely executed. That's genius. And I encourage everyone who's listening here to really take a step back and realize, like, this is a people business. Right? If you can learn to work with people, then I think the success will bring you so much further than you otherwise would by taking a look at things just from the eyes of a spreadsheet and like, no, this is the business plan. This is what we need to be doing. But then not having any sort of empathy or relationship with the people that is you're working with. So fantastic stuff there, Gary.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, folks, so we're coming towards the end of today's show, but before we finish, it is time for the Freedom Five. These are 5 questions that we ask every guest on our show, starting with the most important question: what is your why? What is the underlying motivation behind everything it is that you do?
Well, I got kids, and I want to provide financial freedom for them, and luckily for what I do, I'm able to provide financial freedom for my other family members and friends, and we can all, create a lifestyle that we all want together.
I love that. Second question we have here: what book has had the largest influence on your life?
So I'm a big fan of Crucial Conversations, and it really, we all have those tough conversations, and most of us, we like to avoid, but that gives you some really good tool sets for your personal life and for your business life. It can be used for everything. Definitely recommend that book.
Crucial Conversations, good stuff. Third question we have here: what is the most impactful thing, whether it's a piece of technology, a habit, or a person, that has helped in freeing up your time?
I have an operations person, and she's great because I can pass off all the little things that I need to be doing, and she can handle them, and she loves doing that job. So it's not, and she's very passionate about what we do. So it's infectious, and it frees up a lot of my time, which is great.
That's amazing. Yeah, an operations person. So does she do like the day-to-day responsibilities, or does she build or do you build a system, or like, does she responsible for both? What does that kind of look like?
So yeah, so I rely on her to build the systems, and she'll do like, the EOS. She'll put that in a folder, and she'll take care of the task as well, which is great.
Wow, that's incredible. What is the number one piece of advice you would give to anyone else looking to achieve more control over their time?
Yeah, I think get together with other like-minded individuals, because it really helps keep the energy and the focus on that, because what gets focused gets done. So being around others that want the same thing, I think, really helps, because you could share ideas, and share experiences of what worked, what didn't work.
Absolutely. And the fifth and final question we have here is: what is the best way for our listeners to get in contact with you?
Yep. Head to our website, breakofdaycapital.com. We have an investor guide on there. There's a link to the podcasts that we do, blogs. You can sign up for our email newsletter. So tons of information at breakofdaycapital.com.
Awesome stuff, Gary. Well, tons of really great information today. I really like how you talked about how you established the foundation of it being a great asset manager from the business experience that you had, even as an early childhood person growing up, right? And I also love how you talked about what the day-to-day looks like on an asset manager, what differentiates a good versus not so good asset manager, and what type of background they typically have, both from a business standpoint and the way they work with people. And finally, I really like how you talked about the systems that you put in place to scale, and how you described how you started out from that single family home that you rented out to your own business and getting to where you are at over 3,000 units today. I just want to thank you so much for being a fantastic guest on our show, and I really look forward to being in touch.
Absolutely, Chris. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Now, if you like this show and want to learn more about how we can help you free up your time through passive real estate investments, check out www.freedominvesting.com. Make sure to subscribe to our monthly newsletter and schedule an introductory call with our team. We also have a free 7-day course on what passive real estate investing is and how to get started so that you can start your journey towards earning back more time in your life. To all of our amazing listeners here on the Freedom Investing Podcast, my name is Chris Toribio. Till next time.